time on the Now Morning Show. And we are always going to be touching on all the important topics as well as the trending stuff as well. So this morning I'm going to be joined by Camille Kwamina, who's a clinical psychologist, because we're going to discuss anxiety in the wake of the Christmas season. Good morning, Camille.
Hi, good morning.
Thank you for joining us this morning and season's greetings.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you, thank you. Now, there are different issues that people deal with, and coming up to this in the time in the season of Christmas, one thing that is really triggered in some people who already suffer this is anxiety. Tell us a little bit about anxiety, especially in the Christmas season.
So, anxiety is really a very dominant emotion of faith. It's one of unease, one of worry, and it is usually accompanied with behaviors meant to avoid the feeling. And that is actually what we refer to as anxiety. During the Christmas season, we can see a lot of spikes in anxiety. I mean, it may be the first season since a loved one, maybe the first Christmas, sorry, since a loved one has passed. It's the first Christmas for a lot of persons given this pandemic who have lost jobs, who have, had to be struggling with homeschooling, struggling with adjusting to this. So there's a lot of anxiety, additional new anxiety, in addition to some of the usual triggers that may occur during the season.
And let's discuss some of the things that we may not know that were caused by it.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Let's discuss some of the things that people generally don't know are caused by anxiety. Some of the signs, the symptoms, and some of the effects.
Yeah. So, some of the more uncommon things, and a lot of times we think that, we're actually high performing, that may be triggered by anxiety, not really paying attention to your body and just going. So it's the Christmas season, I have to clean, I have to bake ham, I have to bake cake, I have to bake bread, but I'm not paying attention to how I feel.
Right.
And for the moment, I'm ignoring how I feel and I'm just trying to achieve a list of conditions. Basically, we can attribute that to some sort of anxious behavior where there's a lot of focus on the external environment versus what's going on within.
And how can we treat with these things? Christmas isn't always a fun experience for everyone. And, some of the things that come up during Christmas time may trigger it. So how do we treat with it?
Yeah. So there are a couple of things I think that we need to understand. First of all, anxiety, which is that, and just in behavior in general, actually, which is that there's always a reason that we do what we do. Sometimes those reasons are based on beliefs that are conscious to us, and sometimes they're based on beliefs that are not conscious to us in that moment. They may have come from something we experienced during our early environment, that we have held on to and have sort of drafted our life around it basically without realizing.
Right.
So I think the first step to really coping with anxiety is to understand that there are two main assumptions being made when we sort of subscribe to fear, worry, or unease. And the first thing is we're sort of catastrophizing or sort of predicting a worst case outcome. So we're saying that it is expected that the worst thing is going to happen. So that's the first thing we're doing that we don't actually factually know. And the second assumption that we're making is that we're not good enough to overcome. So let's say the worst case scenario does happen. It becomes very worrying. And I need to sort of focus and make sure that it doesn't happen because I can't manage it, is the second assumption being made. And that also isn't true because just factually speaking, I'm sure there have been moments in our lives where we would have said, oh gosh, I'm not going to make it through this. But then here we are smiling, speaking to each other basically. So, you are going to overcome, even if the worst case scenario happens, it's okay to have a little bit of trust in your own ability, essentially. And then there's a third element that I think also deserves some attention, which are the sort of conditions we put on ourselves, kind of like what I was saying before. So in order for it to be a good Christmas, I must bake 5 cakes, I must bake 2 loaves of bread or something to that end, which is not really necessarily true. Those are conditions that we're actually putting on ourselves.
And it really can be a difficult time for many people, not only those with anxiety, but what are some of the reasons why this time may be so difficult?
Yeah, so this time of the year is usually where I think two major things happen. We spend a lot of time with family, or there's an expectation that, this season is about family and togetherness. And sometimes we may have some people in our family that hurt us, that hurt our feelings, that are toxic, that will make us feel good. And then the other side of it is the expectation that you're able to purchase gifts, that you're able to have your house lit up. And sometimes we don't have the money or the resources to be able to live up to the expectations that we may see in movies or TVs or
Right,
hair.
or the time.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So what are some of the coping tools and methods that you would recommend to deal with this?
So I think the first thing is really not to be afraid of your unease or your worry. A lot of the emotions that we feel just indicate literally what we're feeling. We sometimes can get a little confused and say, because I feel fearful, that maybe this situation is a worrying situation or it's a situation that requires fear. But that may not necessarily be true. It may be that the situation is triggering a particular type of reaction with you, and getting comfortable with that reaction allows us to not have to shy away from certain situations in our external life to avoid it. And it also sort of helps us to, it's only scary when it's new, when we're not sure how we're going to manage it. But after you've experienced it and you've been able to implement certain behaviors or certain practices to help make it better, it isn't so scary the second time. So it's really just getting through it the first time that I think is super important and takes a little bit of bravery and a little bit of practice to be able to do.
To get over that first hurdle, and then it gets easier from then on. I want to thank you so much, Camille, for joining us this morning, giving us this information. And that was Camille Kwamina there, who's a clinical psychologist, and we have been speaking about anxiety during the Christmas season. All right, so Inka just walked into studio. Coming up next is entertainment news, of course, and so much more in this hour. So stay right where you are. This is In Our Morning Show.